And our body's always talking to us. Our culture tells us also not to pay attention to it. There used to be signs up in the gym that say things that seem rather unintelligent to me at this point, where it's like pain is weakness leaving the body. Uh-uh. Pain is a sign that something's wrong and needs to be addressed. It's a warning. It's some kind of a signal that we need to pay attention. And so it's constantly talking to us. And at some point, it starts screaming at us. When we
Mhm.
feel pain, that's our body screaming at us. And all pain is actually created in the brain. Somebody goes to the doctor and they can't figure it out. They go, it's in your head. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, to say this kindly, all pain is literally created in the brain, right? Because
Mhm.
if I press down on my arm with my finger, 10 pounds of force, it feels like pressure, but it doesn't feel like pain. But if I tape a pin to my finger and push down with 10 pounds of force,
Mm.
now my body's going to interpret that pressure as pain. It's just an interpretation. In the same way that if I broke my leg, it's going to create emotional pain. Having emotional pain equally can create physical pain.
Mm.
It's a common thing for somebody to say, oh, when I get stressed out, my shoulders, it gets so tight and painful. Maybe it even
I
gets to the
know.
point of like so much tension, it creates migraines,
And I'm
right?
like, "Oh, you're so close.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can get
So
there."
close. Yes. Then, but this the emotional pain is real, and they feel like they're carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders,
Mhm.
is how they'll oftentimes describe their emotional stresses. We have an emotional body, we have a physical body, but they're so intimately intertwined that you really can't separate the two. It turns out that much of the physical discomfort people feel is them talking to themselves, creating some kind of a warning, creating some kind of a signal. It's their own body screaming at them to pay attention to themselves. And this is the only way they're going to pay attention. Without this pain, their body, it can't talk loud enough. They're just
Mm.
not listening. And it gets them to the point where it's like, okay, cool, you're not going to listen. We're going to force you to listen. And so
Mm.
that mental emotional stress actually ends up then creating physical discomfort.
Yeah, it's like you're putting your body into tension over and over again for no real reason.
That's
You're
right.
just putting it in the spot, and
Yeah.
acting out is just like it's like the
Yeah.
natural thing. It's
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And we're forced to repress it all because we need to
Mm.
be socially acceptable.
Yeah.
That's not what we do. That's not what we do. Yeah. And so these emotions get trapped. And
Mhm.
quite honestly, for any of your listeners who've experienced muscle activation techniques, there's a story that muscle activation techniques doesn't seem to back up with what the rest of the world tells us. And that's a story about muscular weakness and strength. It's a story about how long does it take to get a muscle to be strong. And the story that we're told is, weeks to months, if not longer. But we see changes in an instant. Somebody
Mhm.
goes from not being able to engage a muscle, the signal isn't traveling through the nervous system, making it to that muscle fiber, telling it to contract, and instantly there's a change. How long does it take to go through and do a test, activate the muscle, do a
12,
test? It
15 seconds. Yeah.
takes almost no time at all.
Mhm.
So just like that, it's almost as easy and effortless to remove emotional charge on things from our past. If you know how to have a conversation with the unconscious, if you know how the nervous system works to formulate memories and attach emotions to it, having a simple understanding of these things, you can have repressed emotions of anger, fear, sadness, hurt, guilt, embarrassment, betrayal just utterly disappear in a matter of a few minutes, which the whole psychology world uh, probably there's maybe an unawareness of that,
Mhm.
but they, I'm sure, would find in disbelief, just as many of the people who work with physical bodies in the world would hear a muscle activation story. and hear it in disbelief.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of
I,
simple. It's kind of easy.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I've experienced it as, as an MAT client, um, dealing with multiple traumas to my one of my legs.
Yeah.
And I was probably like a specialist for 4 or 5 years at this point, and I hurt my left knee, and it was wrapped up within getting treated. And a muscle activation technique is a very personal thing to me, especially back then. It was part of my identity,
Hmm.
and that I